The sun was barely rising over the quiet military training grounds, casting long shadows across the dusty road. A cold breeze brushed through the tall fences as a lone figure walked steadily along the gravel path, calm, silent, and strangely composed. He wore a worn-out leather jacket, dark sunglasses, and a black beanie pulled low over his head. His steps were slow, deliberate, almost too controlled. Anyone who didn't know him would assume he was just another rugged traveler passing through. But this wasn't just anyone. It was Steven Seagal. Except today, he looked nothing like the Hollywood martial arts legend the world knew. No luxury car, no film crew following him, no flashy clothes. Nothing that hinted he was a master of Aikido, a weapons expert, and a man trained by some of the world's greatest martial artists. Today, he was incognito, filming scenes for a documentary about survival and mental discipline. And he preferred to move unnoticed. But unnoticed was not going to happen. A pair of National Guard soldiers patrolling the perimeter spotted him instantly. The way he walked, silent, straight-backed, unbothered, looked unusual, suspicious, even threatening. One soldier nudged the other. "Hey, you see that guy? He's headed straight toward the restricted zone." The other squinted. "Yeah, and he's way too calm, like he's hiding something." They exchanged a quick look, then marched forward, boots crunching against the gravel. The tension in the air shifted as they approached him. "Sir, stop right there," the first soldier barked. Steven slowed but didn't flinch. His face remained expressionless behind his sunglasses. He lifted his head slightly, acknowledging them with a calmness that only made them more uneasy. "Can we help you?" he said in that slow, low voice he was famous for, though they didn't recognize it yet. "Identify yourself," the soldier demanded. "This is a restricted area." Steven paused for a moment, sensing their nerves. "Just passing through," he replied, voice collected and controlled. But the soldiers weren't satisfied. The calmness, the confidence, the silent power in his posture, all of it made them even more suspicious. More soldiers in the distance turned their heads. Tension thickened, and in that moment, no one had any idea who they had just confronted. And what Steven Seagal did next would leave the entire National Guard stunned. The two National Guard soldiers exchanged uneasy glances as Steven Seagal stood calmly in front of them, barely moving, barely even breathing. Something about his presence felt off. Too quiet, too controlled. Men who were innocent usually panicked in situations like this. But this man, he was steady as a mountain. "Sir, we're going to need you to open that bag," one soldier ordered, pointing to the heavy backpack slung over Steven's shoulder. Steven didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at the bag, then back at the soldier. "It's camera equipment," he said softly. "I'm filming a documentary." The soldiers didn't buy it for a second. "A documentary?" The younger guard scoffed. "Out here? Alone? Dressed like that?" Steven gave a slow shrug. Sometimes the best shots happen when no one knows you're filming. But his calmness only made them more tense. The older soldier stepped forward, circling Steven slowly like he was assessing a threat. "You're acting suspicious, sir. We need to make sure you're not carrying anything dangerous." Steven sighed, not out of irritation, but out of the deep patience of a man who had been in far worse situations than this. "I understand your job," he said gently, "but I'm not here to cause trouble." That gentleness almost made things worse. Because nothing intimidates a nervous soldier more than someone who isn't intimidated. The younger guard pressed a hand to his earpiece. "Control, we may have a situation. Possible hostile individual. Requesting backup." Steven raised an eyebrow behind his glasses. "Hostile," he repeated. "I'm standing still." But the radio crackled back. "Backup on the way." Within moments, two more soldiers approached, hands close to their holsters. The mood shifted instantly. Bystanders from a nearby parking area stopped what they were doing and began edging closer, whispering among themselves. "Who is that guy? He looks dangerous. Why is he so calm?" Phone started recording. The younger guard puffed his chest out, emboldened by the reinforcements. "Sir, put the bag down and step back." Steven didn't move. "There's no need for this," he said quietly. "If you want to see what's inside, I can show you, but calm down." That single phrase, "calm down," snapped the soldier's patience. "Don't tell me to calm down," the guard snapped. "You're the one acting suspicious." Steven remained motionless, unshaken, unbothered, completely in control. His voice dropped lower, almost like a warning only a trained ear would recognize. You're escalating something that doesn't need escalation. The soldiers braced themselves, unsure if that meant a threat. It didn't. But the man saying it was a threat all by himself, even if they didn't know it yet. The tension thickened as more phones rose into the air. People whispered, "What's happening? Why are they surrounding him?" A mother pulled her child behind her. Drivers stopped their cars to watch. The scene was building, boiling, ready to explode. Have you ever seen someone misjudged just by appearance? Tell me, and comment your country or city so I know where you're watching this from. The soldiers tightened their formation around Steven, unaware that they were surrounding one of the deadliest martial artists alive. Unaware that every calm breath he took was a sign of discipline, not danger. Unaware of how badly they were about to underestimate him. And unaware of the shocking turn this situation was moments away from taking. Backup arrived faster than anyone expected. 3 more Humvees rolled into the parking lot, their engines rumbling like distant thunder. Doors slammed open, boots hit the ground, and within seconds the area transformed from a routine patrol zone into a battlefield waiting to happen. At the center of it all stood Steven Seagal, still, silent, unmoved. A circle of soldiers tightened around him, weapons not yet drawn but hands resting dangerously close to their holsters. The whispering crowd grew denser, phones held high, waiting for the moment something snapped. On social media, this kind of tension spread like wildfire. Every second felt like a live countdown to chaos. The ranking officer stepped forward, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern face and a voice that carried authority. "Sir," he said firmly, "you are being detained for further questioning. Put the backpack on the ground and step away. Now." Steven exhaled slowly, lips pressed into a thin line. "Your men are overreacting," he said, his voice still controlled. "I told you it's camera gear. I'm filming a documentary on urban resilience. Nothing more." But his calmness was mistaken for defiance. "That's enough talking," the officer snapped. "Bag." On the ground. Steven gently slid the backpack off his shoulder and placed it on the pavement. The gesture was non-threatening, slow, deliberate, the exact way someone trained to de-escalate would move. But even that didn't help. 2 soldiers immediately rushed in to search the bag, pulling out cameras, wires, batteries, lenses. Nothing illegal, nothing suspicious, just ordinary film equipment. The younger soldier who had first confronted him muttered, "No way, that's it." The older soldier shot him a warning look. "Could still be modified devices. Keep checking." Steven frowned slightly, offended on behalf of his own equipment. "Those lenses cost more than your monthly salary," he murmured under his breath. The young soldier stiffened. "What did you just say?" Steven didn't repeat it. He simply stared, not an aggressive stare, but the kind of assessing gaze martial artists use when mentally calculating every angle, every movement, every possible outcome. The officer noticed. "Sir, I need you to stop looking at my men like that." Steven's expression didn't change. "Like what?" "Like you're analyzing them. Like you're planning something." Steven didn't deny it, because he was analyzing. Not to attack, but to anticipate. He could feel the tension in the air climbing, rising like a wave ready to break. He knew that one wrong breath could trigger panic. The officer stepped closer. "Last warning, stop staring like that." This time, Steven turned his eyes away, not because he feared them, but because he feared what they would force him to do if they kept pushing. But the damage was already done. The younger guard, embarrassed from earlier, stepped forward again. His pride was bruised. His temper was rising. And in front of a growing crowd, the worst thing a young soldier can feel is judged. "You think you're smarter than us? Stronger than us?" he snapped. Steven didn't answer. "You think we don't know who you are?" the guard shouted. The officer barked, "Stand down, private." But the young soldier didn't listen. He stepped closer, jabbing a finger at Steven's chest. "Tell us your real name." Steven quietly replied, "I already did." That was the breaking point. The soldier shoved him. The crowd gasped. Phones zoomed in. Tension became electricity. But Steven didn't move, not a step, not an inch. He absorbed the shove like a statue carved out of stone. And the stillness, that absolute, unshakable stillness, terrified the guards far more than any aggressive reaction would have. The officer grabbed the young soldier's shoulder. "Private, that's enough." But the young soldier, humiliated by Steven's lack of reaction, tried again, this time pulling back his arm to shove harder. He never got the chance. Steven moved. Not fast, Not flashy, just precise. One smooth motion, his hand raised, palm open, gently touching the soldier's forearm, redirecting the shove away from his body. The soldier stumbled forward from his own momentum, nearly falling. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Did you see that? He didn't even push him. That was like Aikido or something. The officer's eyes widened. He recognized the technique. This was no ordinary civilian. Sir, he said quietly, voice shifting, are you trained? Steven didn't respond. He didn't need to, because his posture, relaxed yet ready, told the officer everything he needed to know. This man was a professional, dangerous, but controlled. Exactly the type of individual you never want to corner. But the younger soldier, humiliated for the second time, snapped. Rage overtook reason. He lunged for Steven. And that was the moment everything truly went wrong. Steven moved with the fluid speed of a man who had spent a lifetime mastering the art of effortless defense. One pivot, one gentle redirection, one minimal flick of the wrist, and the soldier was suddenly on the ground, unharmed, but immobilized, before even realizing what happened. The crowd exploded. Oh my God, what did he just do? No way that was real. Cameras flashed. People shouted. Soldiers stumbled back in shock. The officer stepped forward, hand hovering near his weapon, voice trembling slightly. Sir, who are you? Steven Seagal finally lifted his sunglasses, revealing a calm, unwavering stare. I'm someone you should not have mistaken for a threat, he said softly. The officers froze. Because in that moment, they finally understood the truth. They hadn't detained a suspicious stranger. They had cornered a master martial artist. And now the situation was spiraling beyond their control. For a long moment, no one moved. The young soldier was still on the ground, staring up at Steven with a mixture of confusion, shock, and wounded pride. The other National Guard members stood frozen, their earlier aggression replaced with a very different emotion. Unease. Because what they had just witnessed was not normal, not accidental, not something any untrained civilian could ever do. The ranking officer swallowed hard, realizing he needed to regain control of the situation before it spiraled into complete chaos. Everyone step back, he ordered, raising a hand. But the crowd didn't step back, they stepped forward. More people had gathered now, drawn in by whispers that floated around like wildfire. Who is that guy? He moved like a martial arts master. I've seen that technique before on TV. No way. Is that? A man in the back pushed through the crowd, squinting at Steven as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. Hold up, he said loudly. Is that Steven Seagal? The name sliced through the air like a blade. Soldiers shifted uneasily. The officer blinked twice. Even the young soldier on the ground stopped breathing for a moment. And in seconds, the entire crowd erupted into whispers. Steven Seagal? The actor? No, he's more than that. He's a legit martial artist. He trained with Japanese masters. He's worked with law enforcement too. That explains the moves. The confused tension transformed into excited energy. Phones pointed at Steven like a field of glowing stars. Steven stood silently in the middle, calm, still, unmoved, as if he had expected this moment all along. The officer approached cautiously, clearing his throat. Sir, his voice softened. Is that true? Are you Steven Seagal? Steven didn't answer immediately. He simply lowered his sunglasses again, the gesture slow and iconic. A gesture people around the world had seen in films for decades. A teenage boy in the crowd gasped. Bro, that is him. The soldiers exchanged looks of embarrassment. The younger one's face turned red, realizing he had just tried to shove a man who could dismantle him with 2 fingers. The officer exhaled shakily. Why didn't you just tell us who you were? Steven's tone remained calm. Because my name shouldn't matter. Your approach should be the same with everyone. Respect isn't something you only give to people you recognize. Those words hit harder than any punch he could have thrown. Even the crowd murmured in agreement. But the embarrassment wasn't over yet. One of the soldiers, shaking slightly, walked toward the officer. Sir, we have a problem. What now? The officer muttered. The soldier held up a tablet showing a live video feed from the crowd's social media posts. Comments streamed across the screen faster than the officer could read. He's innocent. National Guard harassing Steven Seagal. Look how calm he is. Soldier tried to shove him, twice. Seagal handled him like a kid. This is going viral. The officer's face drained of color. Oh no, he whispered. Because this wasn't just a random confrontation anymore. It was now a public incident, one that millions could view and judge within minutes. He turned towards Steven, suddenly looking much smaller than before. "Sir, I want to apologize for my men. And for myself." Steven remained silent for a few seconds, then finally spoke. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm filming a documentary on mental discipline. Violence was never my intention." The young soldier on the ground slowly stood up. His voice cracked as he said, I didn't know who you were." Steven looked at him for a long, uncomfortable moment. "I'm not angry," he said softly. "But you need to learn something. Never judge a person by appearance. And never assume calmness is weakness. Sometimes calmness is the final warning." The soldier lowered his head, ashamed. But before anyone could react further, another sound echoed across the parking lot. The distant roar of a military truck approaching at high speed. The officer stiffened when he saw the emblem on the side of the vehicle. "Oh no, that's command." A major stepped out, crisp uniform, rigid posture, eyes like steel. The crowd went silent. Even the soldiers straightened up instantly. "Report," the major demanded. The officer, sweating now, pointed toward Steven. "We may have detained someone important." Without cause. The major turned, saw Steven Seagal standing there with arms relaxed at his sides, and his tough expression shattered like thin glass. "Oh my God," he breathed. "Mr. Seagal." Some soldiers looked away in pure humiliation. The major walked straight toward him, extending both hands. "Sir, I am deeply, deeply sorry. This entire situation was a misunderstanding." Steven didn't take his hands. He simply nodded once. But the crowd saw everything. The major, the man who commanded half the base, was treating Steven with the respect the guards should have shown from the start. And that's when the realization hit everyone. They hadn't stopped a suspicious stranger. They had confronted a global martial arts icon. They had embarrassed themselves in front of cameras. And the world was already watching. The major swallowed hard and said, "Mr. Seagal, please allow me to escort you personally. We need to clear this up before media gets involved." Steven turned toward the crowd and the trembling soldiers and said quietly, "Media's already involved." Every camera pointed at him. Every phone was recording. Every second was going viral. And the National Guard knew. They had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. The major's frantic apology hung in the air, but Steven Seagal didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, shoulders relaxed, hands loosely at his sides. Yet the entire National Guard felt as if they were standing before a storm they had no control over. The cameras kept recording. The soldiers kept staring. The world kept watching. The major cleared his throat and tried again. "Mr. Seagal, please allow us to escort you to our command post. We want to resolve this professionally." Steven raised his hand slightly. Just that small gesture silenced everyone. He removed his sunglasses slowly, revealing a calm, yet piercing gaze that seemed to cut through the tension like a blade. His voice, when he finally spoke, was deep and steady. The kind of voice that carried authority without needing to shout. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not until we talk about what just happened." The soldiers tensed. The major stiffened. The crowd leaned in. Steven turned his head and looked directly at the young soldier who had shoved him earlier. The kid's face was red with shame, sweat collecting at his temples. "You," Steven said quietly. "Step forward." The young soldier hesitated, then obeyed, boots barely lifting off the ground as he approached. He looked like a student being called out by a master, one who knew exactly how badly he had messed up. "What's your name?" Steven asked. Private Lewis, sir." "Lewis," Steven repeated, nodding slightly. "Tell me something. When you saw me walking, what did you see?" Lewis swallowed. "A suspicious person, sir." "No," Steven corrected softly. "You saw what you wanted to see. You let fear guide you. Fear is a dangerous partner on a battlefield, but even more dangerous in a place of peace." Lewis lowered his head. The major shifted uncomfortably, embarrassed on behalf of his entire branch. "You shoved me not because I threatened you," Steven continued, "but because you felt your ego was threatened." The crowd murmured in agreement. The major tried to interject. "Mr. Seagal, if I may." Steven didn't even look at him. "I'm not finished." The major froze. Steven stepped forward, just one step. And even that small movement made several soldiers instinctively tense their shoulders. "You are soldiers," he said. "Trained to protect. Trained to serve. But today, instead of protecting the public, You intimidated one. Silence. Not even the wind dared to move. You escalated instead of listening. You judged instead of observing. You pushed instead of thinking. Lewis's breathing grew shaky. And the worst part, Steven said, you didn't act out of strength, but out of weakness disguised as authority. The air felt heavy enough to crush concrete. But then Steven softened his voice, the tone shifting from sharp reprimand to something almost fatherly. Being a soldier isn't about power, Lewis. It's about responsibility. Your uniform doesn't make you a warrior. Your choices do. Lewis blinked hard, eyes glistening. Steven placed a hand gently on the soldier's shoulder, a gesture so unexpectedly kind that Lewis looked stunned. You can learn from this, Steven said quietly, and be better. The crowd applauded softly, moved by the unexpected grace in his words. But Steven wasn't done addressing the rest of the National Guard. He turned toward the major. Your men need more training. Not in weapons, not in tactics, but in discipline of the mind. The major nodded, shamefully agreeing. You're absolutely right, sir. Steven pointed to the gathered troops. If 4 trained soldiers panic at the sight of one calm man, what does that say about your readiness? Several soldiers looked away, embarrassed. And if a group of men with rifles feel threatened by someone carrying a backpack, what does that say about your confidence in your own training? The major sighed deeply. Sir, all I can say is that we made a mistake. Steven nodded. Everyone makes mistakes, but not everyone learns from them. Then, in a moment that sent chills through the entire crowd, Steven raised his chin slightly and said, calmness is not the absence of power. It is the understanding of it. A long silence followed, the kind of silence that only comes after hearing something undeniably true. The major finally stepped forward. Mr. Seagal, if you would allow us, we want to formally clear your name and escort you safely, and we will make a public statement. Steven stared at him for a few seconds, then gave a small nod. Good, he said. But remember, this isn't about me. It's about how you treat every civilian, not just the ones you recognize. The major nodded again, humbled. But before anyone could move, someone in the crowd shouted, too late. This is already blowing up online. Every soldier felt their stomach drop, because now, their mistake was no longer just a lesson. It was a viral moment, and the fallout was coming. Steven slid his sunglasses back on. We're not done here, he said softly, and the National Guard braced themselves, because the world was about to weigh in. The moment Steven put his sunglasses back on, it was as if the entire scene shifted into a new chapter, one where the National Guard no longer had control. The crowd had grown to nearly 100 people, all standing shoulder to shoulder, phones raised high, recording every breath, every blink, every uncomfortable twitch the soldiers made. The major, trying to maintain authority, gestured for his men to widen the perimeter. Everyone stay back. We are handling the situation. A man in the crowd shouted, handling it? You guys just tackled Steven Seagal. Another voice chimed in. Yeah, the man is a martial arts legend. You're lucky he didn't flip all of you. The major's jaw tightened. His men shifted nervously. And under that growing pressure, the truth finally detonated. A woman pushed forward, holding her phone up so everyone could see the live stream. Guys, look, it's already trending. Hashtag Steven Seagal detained is blowing up. The major snatched the phone to see for himself, and his face drained of all color. There were hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments, hundreds of reactions per second. The crowd surged with excitement. Look at this one, the woman said. She scrolled down to a viral clip showing the moment Steven effortlessly deflected Private Lewis's shove, sending him stumbling. Replies were brutal. He moved like water. Those soldiers had no chance. That was Aikido 100%. How do you detain a master? National Guard needs to train with him. The humiliation hit the soldiers like a punch. Steven watched quietly, observing the chaos without adding to it. His calmness only made the soldiers look more frantic. The major tried to regain command. Everyone stopped filming. A teenager laughed. Too late, sir. Millions already have. The major's eyes flickered with panic. This will reach Command HQ. Steven spoke, his voice cutting through the noise effortlessly. It already has. Every soldier looked up, and sure enough, a black government SUV raced toward them, gravel flying behind its tires. It screeched to a halt, the doors bursting open as 2 stern-looking officers stepped out, wearing the insignia of higher-ranking federal military oversight. The major stiffened. "General Peterson, sir." The general ignored him completely. His eyes went straight to Steven. "Mr. Seagal, we were informed about a confrontation. Are you unharmed?" The soldiers stared, stunned that a general was addressing Steven like a VIP. Steven nodded once. "I'm fine, but your men need to understand the difference between suspicion and arrogance." The general's expression hardened. He turned to the troops. "Who initiated physical contact?" Private Lewis stepped forward, trembling. "I did, sir." "Twice," Steven added calmly. The general rubbed his forehead. "You put hands on him? Steven Seagal? Do you understand what you've done?" Lewis swallowed so hard it was audible. The general pointed at the major next. "And you allowed this to escalate? You detained a global public figure without verifying identity." The major looked like he might faint. "This isn't a simple mistake," the general continued sharply. "This is a public relations disaster. For the state. For the guard. For the entire department." The humiliation flared across the soldiers' faces. The general turned back to Steven. "Sir, I want to personally apologize. You deserved respect from the moment you were approached." Steven didn't respond immediately. He let silence do the work. It made the soldiers sweat even more. "Finally," he said, "respect should be given to everyone, whether they're famous or not, whether they look suspicious or not. That's the part you're missing." The general nodded. "You're absolutely right." Steven faced the soldiers now, his posture steady, eyes calm but powerful. "You judged me because I walked alone," he said. "You judged me because I didn't react with fear. You judged me because I stayed calm." Lewis whispered, "Sir, I'm truly sorry." Steven took a step closer to him. "Apologies are good, but lessons are better." Lewis nodded rapidly. Steven raised his voice slightly so the entire crowd, and the thousands watching online, could hear. "Strength is not in your weapons. It's in your discipline. The world is watching you. And today, you showed them something you should not be proud of." A hush fell. Steven continued, "But mistakes don't define you. What you choose to do next, that's what matters." The general straightened his posture. "Mr. Seagal, I promise there will be consequences. For everyone involved." The crowd cheered at that. But Steven lifted his hand, instantly silencing them. "No need for punishment," he said. "What they need is training. Real training. Someone to teach them control, awareness, balance." The general's eyes widened slightly. "Are you offering, sir?" Steven shrugged lightly. "If you want your men to understand what calm strength looks like, I can show you." Gasps spread across the crowd. The soldiers who had been terrified moments ago now looked amazed. The general nodded. "We would be honored." Steven gave a small, iconic smile. "Then let's turn this mistake into something useful." The crowd erupted in applause. The soldiers finally exhaled, and the National Guard realized something they never expected. The man they had just detained might become the man who trains them. That be why the time Steven Seagal agreed to help train the National Guard, the entire world had already exploded with reactions. The parking lot buzzed with cheers, soldiers stood straighter, and the general looked as though a crisis had just transformed into an opportunity. But the internet was going wild. Within minutes, clips from the confrontation began flooding every platform: YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. Some were slow-motion replays of Steven redirecting Private Lewis's shove with absolute ease. Others captured Steven delivering his calm but powerful speech about respect, discipline, and judgment. The hashtag Steven Seagal detained hit 1 million views, then 10 million, then continued climbing at lightning speed. Meanwhile, journalists began arriving on scene, vans rolling up, microphones raised, drones buzzing overhead. The major rubbed his temples. "Dear God, this is going to be everywhere." Steven didn't acknowledge the reporters. Instead, he focused on the soldiers, the same ones who had treated him with suspicion earlier. Now they stood in a line, eyes lowered, humbled. The general stepped closer to Steven. "Sir, the governor has already been notified. They want to release an official statement, and they'd like to speak with you privately." Steven slid his sunglasses up the bridge of his nose. "Later. Right now, I need to say something to everyone." Reporters rushed forward. Microphones pointed at Steven like arrows. Cameras zoomed in. He lifted a hand, the same gesture that had silenced an entire military unit earlier, and the crowd fell quiet again. His voice was steady, controlled, calm. "Everyone here saw what happened today," he began. "The world saw it too. Some people will laugh. Some will judge. Some will make the soldiers here look like villains. He turned toward the National Guard, not with anger, but with responsibility. But these men did what many people do every day. They judged by appearance, not by truth. They let fear lead, instead of understanding. Lewis shifted uncomfortably, but Steven continued. I'm not here to ruin careers. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm here to remind the world of something simple. Respect must come before reaction. If you don't know who someone is, you listen. You observe. You stay calm. Reporters scribbled frantically. The crowd nodded. Steven pointed at the soldiers, a gesture not of accusation, but of inclusion. These men learned a hard lesson today, but they learned it, and that matters. The general bowed his head slightly, grateful. Steven continued. I've spent my life studying disciplines from around the world. Martial arts, awareness, control. And if these men want to learn, truly learn, I will help them. Gasps spread across the crowd. The reporters swarmed with questions. Mr. Seagal, are you officially training the National Guard? Is this going to be a long-term program? Will you work with federal agencies? Steven didn't answer any of them directly. Instead, he delivered the line that would go viral globally. Strength without respect is dangerous. Strength with discipline is unbeatable. The crowd erupted into applause. Even the soldiers, embarrassed moments earlier, raised their heads, pride rekindling. Steven turned back to Private Lewis. The young soldier looked nervous, but Steven placed a hand on his shoulder again, firm and reassuring. You have potential, Steven said softly. Don't let fear make your choices for you. Lewis nodded, overwhelmed. Sir, thank you. The general stepped forward. Mr. Seagal, on behalf of the National Guard, I want to extend our gratitude. You turned what could have been a disaster into something that will make us better. Steven offered a small smile, the first genuine smile of the day. I hope so, he said, because the world is watching now. And he was right. News headlines appeared within minutes. National Guard detains Steven Seagal, ends with humiliating lesson in discipline. Martial arts legend schools soldiers in viral encounter. From confrontation to cooperation, Steven Seagal to train Guard members. The entire world cheered his calm strength, his humility, and the way he handled the situation without ego or violence. As Steven walked away with the general, the crowd chanted one word. Respect, respect, respect. And across the internet, people echoed the same message. If you believe no one should be judged by appearance, type respect in the comments. The story had ended, but the movement had just begun.